Friends, hello. Trump promised to bomb Moscow. Supplies to Ukraine have resumed. Another statement was made in the State Duma that is worth hearing. So check if you are subscribed to the channel, and we will start with this. CNN. Trump says what he threatened Putin with. I don't believe you. I said, he said no way, and I said, and then like I don't believe you, true believe me 10% with President Chief China, but I said the same thing to them. Hey, and what presented these words were spoken by him in 2024, in the 25th year. And we are at the point where we passed the point where Trump said that Putin was almost his best friend. And now he claims that Putin is pushing it on him. However, see for yourself. In general, the gist is this. According to Trump, Putin is very nice in conversations about Ukraine, but he speaks like this, well, as usual, you know. And Trump got it. Moreover, first America suspended aid to Ukraine, and now America has begun to prepare new sanctions against Russia and is already unfreezing arms supplies. The White House said, they are the biggest supporters of Ukraine, and arms supplies will continue. The more often Trump communicates directly with Putin, the more, apparently, he comes to the conclusion that talking is generally useless. There, of course, when the ducks are on the seventh day, and to be honest, there is not much faith in Trump's words, because at first he promised to stop it in a day, then in a week, but on the other hand, everything comes to an end, patience too. So the Trump administration, as we can see, is already turning 180. And what this will lead to in the foreseeable future, we will see, and in the near future. Well, by the way, here's what I've wanted to tell you about Trump for a long time, and the elderly president. I often saw comments from Putin supporters before, like, are you for Biden? And look at him. Now they write the same thing about Trump, like, guys, I don't care about American presidents in general. American problems are the problems of American voters, the problems of the American opposition. They will sort it out themselves. They have courts that work. They have voting rights that also work. At least for them, it may not be perfect, but it works. And there is another moment when the old man turns out to be crazy, as one journalist friend of mine said, but in America they are at least replaceable. When the sane, by the way, do you know how harshly the Kremlin responded to Trump's words? The Kremlin did not dare to criticize him. The Kremlin is quite calm about the harsh statements of the US president. Peskov said, Trump generally has a fairly tough style in the phrases he uses and so on. We expect to continue our dialogue with Washington and our line on repairing the pretty broken bilateral relations. In other words, they swallowed it. Here's a statement that was made by the State Duma, or rather, by a specific deputy, Gurul. And you can, of course, treat him as you like, but still, he is a State Duma deputy, and he has some information. The most important thing is to prepare your people for war, which today does not really want to fight, and most likely does not want to fight at all. And within the framework of these information operations, which are not so much aimed at us as at the domestic audience, to create an image of an enemy that will inevitably attack Poland, Germany, France and seek to enslave, capture, destroy, and so on and so forth. It cannot be done any other way. The same thing happened in Ukraine. The same thing. After all, the image of an enemy from Russia was created consistently, right? Yes, and when they tell me that they will be ready by 2029, they will not be ready by 2029, 2030, 2031. Why is this exactly the period during which they will be able to prepare their population for war? Gruliav believes that a war between Russia and Europe is inevitable and that, it turns out, Europe is preparing to attack Russia. The population is being pumped up. They say, peaceful Russia wants to attack with hostility, wants to occupy European lands. Russia has never attacked anyone. Everyone knows this. That is why Europe is preparing. And according to Putin, if a fight is inevitable, you have to strike first. And here's the question. What are these very competent managers preparing us for now? The more often such statements are heard, when Lavrov says, no, We will not attack anyone. When Gurulayev says that it is inevitable, one question arises. When, by the way, another interesting statement from the State Duma. Listen to what they are worried about there. Dear Andrei Sergeyevich, as they say, the theater begins with the coat rack, but the same can be said about airports, train stations. There everything begins with parking rates, buffets, prices for water, plain water, coffee in cafes. Well, and today the situation, yes, and lately it is, one might say, outrageous, if you compare prices with the cost of a ticket. Sometimes spending time, at the airport, as was the case recently, unfortunately, or at the train station, can cost more than the cost of a ticket. Yes, deputies with salaries of $500,000 talk about how expensive coffee is at airports. I have a question for the deputies. Don't you want to compare real Russian salaries with prices in stores? But no, they think about the people, and you know how else they think about the people. They want to fleece them blind. They want to raise the tax on old cars. Such a bill is already in development. The thing is that for cars older than 15 years, and in our country there are only a handful of them, they want not only to raise the tax, but also to require technical inspections a couple of times a year. The Association of Automobile Dealers wanted to raise the tax, and let's ask ourselves a very simple question. Do the richest strata of society really drive cars older than 15 years? No, on the contrary, such cars are used by those who do not have money to buy something newer, and on top of that they want to rip them off so that the poor become even poorer and the rich even richer. Well, now a short pleasant pause. Take a breath and let's continue. This has never happened before. I want to share some good news in the middle of the video. A very cute situation happened in Dagestan. A hedgehog with scotch tape on his paw asked a person for help. You want something. You want something. And the prickly little thing ran on. Well, that's it. Now take another breath. A real massacre took place in Luzhny Ostrov, on the border of the Luzhny Ostrov National Park. A conflict occurred between local residents and security guards who were accompanying construction equipment. Activists from Mytishchi Korolyov did not want to let in equipment that wanted to tear down literally almost 2,000 trees. Environmentalists and local residents warned that this highway will cause serious harm to nature, disrupt animal immigration, and reduce their habitat, and people are protesting. They demand that the area be recognized as a pedestrian zone, that the signs prohibiting passage be restored, because there are fewer and fewer green areas there. Do you know what competent managers do? Instead of contacting people, they say that the issue is, of course, being discussed, but in the end it almost crushes people, leading to real fights. And what does the police do in this case? Remember, in the last video I showed a major from Penza who was questioning a wheelchair user. Look at such a harsh situation. Who did they send? Here you go. When a wheelchair user pickets, they send a whole major. And when can it come to that? To truly serious consequences. In general, we will follow the development of events. In the meantime, enjoy this. By the way, for some reason we don't talk about this often, but I think we should. A subscriber said that he has gas in his house. Well, there's a nuance. Anton, hi, look, in general, we always use a cylinder like this in our household. That is, we cook feed for chickens and cattle there and generally try it out at gas stations. So, today I went to the gas station where I used to fill this cylinder. I arrive and say, is it possible to fill this cylinder? He tells me, operator, if the cylinder is not expired, then we will fill it. I say, let's see if it is expired or not, based on your words. So, he came up to me in a subdued manner, rubbed here, and said, your cylinder is expired. I will not fill it. You need to buy a new cylinder. I say, and how did you determine that it is expired? Again, a man with a smart look has been wiping here for a long time. He says, you have the year 77, but you need 86. I say, where did you get these? When were these instructions made? I used to fill up with you all the time. He says, since February, there have been such instructions that we do not fill such cylinders. We need to buy a new cylinder. This is how we fill the hole in the gas budget of our country. Now the pensioners who use such cylinders, are forced to buy a new cylinder in addition to gas, and a new cylinder costs 5,000 rubles. This is how our house ended up on the waiting list. You know what the most interesting thing is, guys? I grew up with cylinders like these. My parents and my grandmother still have exactly the same ones. And my school teachers from my native school also have the same ones at home. And if they watch me, they understand perfectly what I mean. I even want to say hello to one of them. I will take advantage of the situation. Of course, I will not name names, but the same one who, after changing the cylinder, checked the tightness of the connection with a lighter and almost burned down our cozy apartment. Why are you smiling, my dear? How is the Pythagorean theorem doing? There's a pipe almost next to our house. Do you still buy gas in cylinders? Yes, be glad that there is order somewhere, where someone is cleaning up. Do not check with a lighter anymore. Say hello to your neighbor and do not vote for such bald stability anymore. Well, what about the amazing news? It looks like they will soon ban the import of iPhones to Russia. They have riveted their own iPhone killers. That's it, you can refuse iPhones altogether. The fact is that if Apple refuses to pre-install the so-called Rust on its smartphones, they can simply ban the import. This was stated by the State Duma deputy Svintsov. Moreover, according to him, this could happen as early as next year. The second amazing news. Russia could bring 1 million labor migrants from India. It turns out that all the agreements have already been reached. This was stated by the head of the Ural Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Migrants are being brought in due to an acute shortage of personnel. Import substitution is in full swing. Russia needs men of working age. I wonder where our own have gone. Well, here's another one, the best one. Rosaviatsia has allowed Nordwind to fly to North Korea. Flights will be carried out between Moscow and Ivhenian twice a week. Well, who wanted to live like in North Korea? You have a great chance. Good luck, and I am not saying goodbye.